Hi, everybody. I want to thank you very much for joining me for 7 Steps to MBA Acceptance in 2021. Thank you very much for coming. A little bit about me. I've been an MBA admissions consultant. First of all, my name is Linda Abraham. I'm the founder and president of Accepted. I've been an MBA admissions consultant since 1994, just over 25 years. I've been quoted in Poets and Quants as recently as yesterday, and over the years in the Wall Street Journal, U.S. News, Business Week, Financial Times, Business Insider, Business Because, many other publications and connections with MBA admissions. I'm the co-founder and first president of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. I've visited business schools on 4 different continents and met or interviewed MBA admissions directors at all the top MBA programs over the last 20 years or so. I'm looking forward to sharing my 25 years plus of admissions consulting experience with you. Before we begin, I want to point out a few items that will help you maximize your time here, and one that will help us improve these webinars. So starting now, number 1, if you've not yet downloaded your webinar worksheet, take a second to do so. My recommendation is that you actually print it out. Doing so will help you follow along and take notes, and you can get it in your control panel. It's in the handout section. Again, I suggest that you actually print it out. Number 2, I'm going to ask a few questions during the presentation and ask you to raise your hands in response. You can do so by clicking on the hand icon, 2 icons underneath the horizontal orange arrow on your control panel. Number 3, we're going to leave the chat window the question window for your questions. And if I ask an open-ended question, I'd like you to respond in the chat window. So I'll keep an eye on both if you get mixed up, and I had used the question window for both previously, but I'm changing things up a little bit. When you leave, you're going to receive a brief survey. Please fill it out. We value your feedback. And just going back to the question and answer thing, if you have a question at any time during the webinar, please post it in the question window. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and actually I will be joined by Natalie Greenblatt Epstein, who's an admissions consultant for Accepted and former director of 3 top MBA programs. But we definitely want to answer as many of your questions as possible. At the end of the presentation portion of the webinar, we're going to have a contest, and you can win a free consultation with me. The contest will be based solely on content presented during the webinar, so stay tuned, take those notes, and then you can win that free consultation. Let's test your hand-raising skill right now. Please raise your hand, click on that icon if you want to go to a top MBA program to enhance your career trajectory and earning potential. Again, please raise your hand, click on that hand icon if you want to go to a top MBA program to enhance your career trajectory and earning potential. Great, most of you are here for the right reasons, and you figured out how to raise your hand in the control panel. Now, before we get into the heart of today's presentation, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. So in the chat window, can you please tell me where you are logging in from? City and state if you're in the United States, city and country if you're outside the United States. Again, in the chat window. Tokyo, Japan, Austin, Texas, Iraq, whoa, Colombia, very international today. Okay, New York, DC, Gainesville, Florida, Boston, Mumbai. Okay, great, wonderful. More Mumbai, more people are chiming in. Great, wonderful. Now I also have a poll for you. You can keep telling me where you're logging in from when you reply to the poll. The poll asks, when do you intend to apply? And the options are fall 2020, winter 2020, 2021, later, and not sure. And just pick the one that you most identify with, okay? Again, the options are fall 2020, winter 2020, 2021, later than those options, and not sure. Man, someone's here from Saudi Arabia also. Wonderful. Very international audience. Okay, we're at 79% having voted. Can we get it over 80? 5, 4, 3, come on, somebody vote. 2, 1. Okay, I'll close the poll. And the results are 61% for the fall, 13% for, which is basically round one, 13% for round two, 13% for sometime later, and 13% not sure. Okay. I guess 13% was the number of the evening, of the day rather. Okay. Now, what motivates me to provide this webinar? Well, it's early. We're really, really early. I'll tell you, it really has grown from 3 motivations or 3 seeds. There's my frustration with applicants who start the process too late and shortchange their chances at their dream schools. We'd love to start working with applicants early because our clients can improve their profile, their qualifications, and their chances of acceptance when they start early. The second reason, or the second seed, is the amount of limiting and misleading imagery in MBA advising. And this can come from very well-meaning people, admissions directors, consultants like myself, and sometimes MBA applicants and students themselves. And then there's the paradox of MBA admissions, which we're going to get to much later in the webinar. And after 25 years in this business, I've seen a lot of metaphors used in describing the MBA admissions process. 1, it's an accounting exercise. It's not a marketing exercise. 2, it's all about personal branding. And 3, it's all about the marketing. Well, I believe metaphors and similes can be useful, and I think they've also been abused in the MBA admissions process, and they have to a certain extent obscured the process. I don't promise an image-free webinar, especially using slides and screen sharing software, but I do believe that the next 40 minutes will provide you with a purpose-driven, goal-centered approach to the MBA application, including what you should be doing now, 6 to 9 months before 75% of you, or 74% to be specific, apply. And if you take these steps now, you will maximize your chances of acceptance at top MBA programs when you apply, whenever you apply, whether it's a 2020-21 application season or later. So let's cultivate these 3 seeds into a flourishing, healthy MBA application. Not bad for somebody who just complained about abusive metaphors in MBA admissions. All right, let's deal with my first seed, right? That's the annual frustration with applicants who come to us at the last minute. Yes, we can polish your essays during the week before the essays are due, and we're happy to do so, but we can do so much more if you start early. This webinar is all about using the next several months before the applications come out to improve your profile and maximize your chances of acceptance so that when they do come out, you can really hit the ground running and be ready for those round 1 deadlines. Now, let me ask you in the chat window or question window, whichever you prefer, what should be the starting point of your MBA planning and application process? What should be the starting point? The test? Okay. I wouldn't say that's where you start. Research, that's a part of it. The GMAT, selecting the schools, GMAT. Ah, very good. Now we got it. Kellen, if I'm mispronouncing somebody's name, I apologize. Evaluating what you are looking to get out of an MBA. Good. Why do I want to do an MBA? Good. Why you want an MBA? Good, Hania, Sophia. That's where you should be starting. What is your goal? Where do you want to end up? So quoting from Stephen Covey, you want to begin with the end in mind. You want to clarify your post-MBA goal. You don't have to have what D. Leopold, formerly of Harvard Admissions, called a laminated life plan. Oh, thank you, Kellen. But you do have to have direction, and that is the foundation for your entire MBA application strategy, even if it changes while you're in business school. It's less likely to change if you do your homework, but it's okay if it changes. There's no problem with that. So, and one of the reasons it's important because business schools are looking for that direction. And here's a quote from a podcast interview that I had with Sujin Kwan, who's been the director of Ross Admissions for a long time now, I think at least 10 years. I asked her, what makes an application really stand out for you? And she replied, people who seem to really know what they want, know themselves, and who can articulate it well. They can connect the dots. So what does that mean when we talk about an MBA goal? Your post-MBA goal, your immediate post-MBA goal is function plus industry. Okay, function means what you want to do. It's not what you want to study. You might want to study marketing or you might want to study finance, but what you want to do is brand management, or it might be investment banking or private equity or becoming a controller or CFO. Those are all things that the study of finance can lead to or the study of marketing can lead to, but that's not what you want to do. And the industry in which you want to do it. That defines your short-term post-MBA goal. You may also be asked, and should have some idea, though it doesn't need to be as clearly defined, what you want to do long-term. What's your longer-term goal, 5 to 10 years down the road? That can be more aspirational. It can be a bit of a dream. Perhaps it's a way of contributing to the betterment of society on a larger scale. It's less critical to your admissions chances from an admissions perspective. But if you have something like this, and certainly if you're asked for something like this, don't hide it. Be prepared to discuss it. Now, what if your goal isn't so sharp, especially the short-term one? Well, what I would suggest you do is try and get information to clarify it. Look at what you like and are good at. Talk to people in positions that you find attractive or think might be attractive. What do they actually do? Ask them, what do you do all day? What education do you believe that you benefited from? Do you wish you would have had before you started? From what programs are you now hiring people for the positions that you find appealing? Then take the time to think about what you want to do. Really take some time to reflect. Yes, that's an important part of the process. Once you have defined your goal, it will be a substantive and meaningful guide in the process of choosing schools, and it'll become your North Star. And it'll even be a guide for you in terms of where to devote your time in terms of extracurricular activities when you're in business school, or what classes to choose, or if you get multiple acceptances, what school to choose. So that really should be your starting point. Again, your North Star. And I'm going to remind you again, as I did at the beginning of this section, for many schools, a clearly defined, realistic post-MBA goal is as much a requirement of admission as a competitive GMAT or quality work experience. Chicago Booth, for example, explicitly says that it seeks a sense of personal direction and realistic expectations for the MBA, and many others have similar statements. That's why so many schools ask about your goals. They care. Now, what about your qualifications? Some of you said when I asked my last question, the test was, I think, the most popular answer after the goals one. There was also one about selecting schools, which we're going to get to. Step 1 is about what you want to get out of the program. Step 2 is about what you bring to the table, evidence of your potential for success in their program and beyond. In the chat window, what different elements make up your qualifications? In the question or the chat window, whichever one you want. What makes up your qualifications? Work experience, very good, Rachel. GMAT, GRE, GPA, work experience, good, Kellen. Work experience, Gracia. Degree, certificates, good, Hania. Work experience, college experience, GPA, test scores, extracurriculars, good. Okay, you guys got this one. So the second step is to evaluate your qualifications. And there are 4 basic areas that you need to examine. Number 1, as I call the 4 pillars of your application. Academics. Show that you can and will do the work. And most of you listed grades and test scores grades and test scores as part of the qualifications. That's certainly true. They're the most common ways to show your academic ability, but not the exclusive ways. Then you have work experience. That was the next, I think, most common answer. And here I have a question for you, and I'm going to share this poll. What do you think is most important? Quantity of work experience, quality of work experience, or both? Please share your thoughts on that. And what do you think is most important? Quantity, quality, or both? Five, four, three, two, one. We got to 80%. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the poll. 3% said quantity, 57% said quality, and 41% said both. I'm in the both camp. Okay, clearly in the both camp. So we're going to examine both. The bullseye in terms of quantity is 3 to 6 years of work experience, 2 to 8 on the outside. In terms of quality, schools want to see that you've handled responsibility, that you've grown in your positions, grown in responsibility, and that you've had impact on the job. They prefer to see demonstrated managerial ability. A nice to have in terms of your experience is something multicultural and global, international, because we are living in an increasingly international world. The third pillar of your application is personal qualities. Now, in the question or the chat window, whichever you prefer, so far you guys have much preferred the question window, what personal qualities are they looking for? What do they want to see in you in terms of who you are? All right, you got this down. Leadership. Leadership is the key quality that they want to see. Leadership, leadership, leadership. They also want to see teamwork, organizational, analytical, and communication skills, initiative, and many also want to see entrepreneurial mindset and ability to assess risk and take reasonable risks. They want to see that you're a contributor, a giver, a person of impact and consequence. All right, what about number 4? The fourth pillar is fit, and that is in terms of culture and values with a specific school, showing that you identify with the school's values and fit well into its culture, meet its qualification, and add to its community. On some level, you could argue, and I think argue well, that the first 3 pillars are also about fit. But I added this as a separate pillar because the school's mission and stated criteria of values are really important. And since they are less quantitative and less concrete and less talked about on some level, less tangible, applicants tend to overlook them, but they are important. Now, if you look at the 4 pillars and you think, I'm really weak on this or I'm weak on that, can these elements be improved or mitigated or enhanced? Yes, absolutely, because you are starting early. Can you improve your profile to make yourself more competitive? Yes, and we're going to get to that in action step number 4. But first, we have to do action step number 3. Action step number 1 was have that, refine your goal. Action step number 2 was assess your qualifications. Now, what's number 3? Research schools. And somebody had said that as a starting place. I think you can research the schools first, but I think that in order to even intelligently approach the research process, you need to know where you want to end up. And then choose the schools you want to apply to. Now, let me ask you another poll. Which elements below are least important when selecting an MBA program to apply to? Which of the following elements are least important? And they are career placement, curriculum, ranking, and extracurricular activities. Again, the options are career placement, curriculum, ranking, and extracurricular activities, and I'm looking for what's least important. Okay, so we're at 74% having voted, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll, and we're actually at 83% having voted. We have a really great audience, and this is kind of interesting. So it's 8% say career placement is least important, 10% say curriculum is least important, 41% say ranking is least important, and 41% say extracurricular activities are least important. Okay, well, I'm clearly in the rankings category, and I'll tell you why. Because in terms of you're achieving your goals, career placement is extremely important. For most, unless you have a job to go back to, you will be interacting with and to a certain and seeking the assistance of the school's career placement. And if they have a track record of placing grads in the positions that you are most interested in the industries and companies that you're most interested in, that should be something that is way up high on your list. The curriculum, well, you're going to be spending 2 years studying. That's definitely important. Extracurricular activities are where most of the networking takes place in MBA programs. Again, they can lead straight to jobs post-MBA. They're where you create your relationships with your fellow classmates. I think they're very, very important. I put rankings last. But We can that's my personal ranking. Now, getting back to researching the schools, what schools are best suited to help you achieve your goals? And that's, by the way, yes, ranking can influence how you achieve your goals, but more rankings reflect the other three elements and not always accurately. So I would look at those three elements. So what you should be looking at, recruiting and placement. Consider your educational preferences and how this particular program is going to meet them. Do you want a case-based program, a program that emphasizes experiential learning, a program that has a mixture of pedagogical approaches depending upon what's being taught? And then there are extracurricular activities and opportunities. Are they related to what you want to do and where you want to do it? And then, of course, there's simply personal preferences. Do you have a significant other that you're going to be taking into account? Do you prefer a warm climate, a cold, or do you not care about climate? Do you prefer a college town in a rural location or a major urban center like Los Angeles or New York? And where should you do your research? Well, you could start with, and I think more effective and more helpful than the overall rankings, are the specialty rankings. So US News has some specialty rankings, Business Week has specialty rankings, and then I would closely examine the career services employment reports, individual school websites. You can also review blogs and try and contact current students and recent alumni, either in the fields that you're interested in or perhaps coming from your home country. I know we have a very international audience here today. That's one way to reach out and see how people coming from similar backgrounds are doing in the areas that you have that you are most interested in. You can also look up school clubs and try and connect with people that have similar goals to yours. Definitely attend MBA tours and school-sponsored events that are close to you. And of course, if you can, try school visits. I realize those are the most expensive and time-consuming ways to research a school, but they are very valuable. Now, as you do your research, you should be asking yourself two key questions. Does this school support my goals? And am I competitive at these schools? You have to answer the second one are you competitive with a yes, or you could end up with rejections. Now, some rejections aren't terrible, but you definitely don't want to end up with all rejections. And that's what this diagram represents. There can be schools you want to attend, but if none of them are likely to want you, you are likely to end up with a fistful of rejections. And that's what you don't want to have happen. And that's what would happen when you don't consider your competitiveness with a certain degree of objectivity. However, if you apply to programs that you want to attend and where they're likely to want you, then you are likely to get some acceptances. Now, this might seem really obvious and simplistic, but you know what? Based on the number of reapplicants I've worked with and some of the school choices that people want to make before they talk to us, it's not as easy as it might seem on the screen. So, but you need to choose schools where the two circles intersect. What if your slides looks more like this than like this? You need to either choose other schools, and then I would suggest one or two of your dream schools, but otherwise schools where, yes, they're likely to want you, or improve your qualifications. And the latter is action item number 4, right? We did number 1 through 3, hone your goal, assess your qualifications, and research the schools. Now it's time to look into improving your profile. Now let's go through the pillars and see how to improve if that's necessary for you. What if the academic pillar needs some work? Well, let's say your undergrad grades were low and you need to provide evidence you have the ability and self-discipline today to succeed. I had a whole podcast on just that, and you can, after the webinar, I suggest you listen to it, accept.com/137. I'm not going to go through it now. That's for those who need it. If your quant skills are weak, you're the proverbial poet, maybe you haven't taken a math class since high school, or you took only one in college, but your grades are good, consider something like mbamath.com, HBS Online, massive open online courses. And then there's the GMAT or GRE. Now, the best way to handle a low GMAT or GRE is to retake and raise it. If you're not sure if you should retake, or if you've taken the GMAT 3 or more times, please see the resources here, because they will tell you if you should retake the GMAT. And again, there's a short video, as you can see from the URL. There's also a full webinar where I address that question. All right, let's go to the second pillar. Again, in this fourth of the 7 steps. Work experience. Let's say you have too little work experience, less than 2 years. Perhaps wait a year or two and aim for schools with lower average ages. The good news about too little work experience is that it tends to take care of itself if you just wait long enough. Schools really have turned away from admitting and matriculating MBA students straight from college or with less than 2 years of work experience because employers have they're responding to employer preferences. If you really want to, if you're in college now and you are interested in going for an MS in management, like that offered by Duke or London Business School, Kellogg Ross, then that's another option for you, provided again that you haven't started working full time. You may also want to consider deferred admissions programs, which have been mushrooming. If you're currently in college, look into Harvard. Harvard has a deferred admission programs 2+2. Stanford's deferred admissions, Chicago, Yale Scholars, MIT Sloan, Wharton, Columbia, Darden. They're all aimed at college students, graduate or master's students also who have not yet worked full time, and they allow you to work for a couple of years and then you have a guaranteed acceptance after that period. What if you have too much work experience? You have, let's say, more than 8 years. Aim for programs with higher ages at matriculation. Let's say you have 6 to 8 years of the average is 6 to 8 years. European programs tend to be a little bit older. You may also want to consider executive MBA programs or Sloan Fellows programs at MIT and London Business School or the Stanford MSX program if you have 10+ years of work experience. If you really, really want to go to the traditional 2-year full-time MBA program and you are at 8+ years, be extra clear about why you want an MBA now at your level, and if at all possible, show that you are not relying on the school to find you a post-MBA job. You have the contacts to achieve your dreams, or perhaps have a company you're returning to, or maybe you're running your own business. That will make a difference and help you. I've mentioned that an international component is valued. It's not required at most schools, but it sure is nice to have. So if you can, at this point in time, move into a project with an international component, assuming you don't have that in your background, that also can help you. Now let's get to the personal qualities. Let's say you've been in a role where you haven't had much leadership, which, as you all know, is really, really important. If you can, take on responsibilities at work that will allow you to demonstrate these qualities, leadership in particular. And it's frequently not so easy to do at work. And it might be easier to assume leadership roles and have the kind of impact and show yourself as a contributor in a volunteer commitment. And that is why community service becomes really, really important in MBA admissions. If you have been involved in a community service capacity, it doesn't have to be with these specific organizations, then see if you can perhaps up your game and take on more responsibilities or more of a leadership role. If you haven't been involved since college, I would say better late than never. And I would not recommend that you use the excuse, oh, it'll look like I'm just doing this for admissions purposes. You might be doing this for admissions purposes, but it still might help. And remember, you don't know that you're going to get accepted this next cycle. You don't know that you're really going to apply round one. If you start doing something now, you'll have a track record of several months. And if you do have to reapply or postpone your application, then of course it's that commitment stretches into a year and a half or 2 years, and suddenly it looks a lot more real. Personal community service is bottom line an opportunity for you to demonstrate the desired personal qualities that your job may not give you the opportunity to demonstrate. Now, until now, we've been talking about pre-application strategy. That's all been steps 1 through, I think we're up to 5 now. No, up to 4. We've gone through 4. Until now, we've been talking about pre-application strategy. And again, it's number 1, hone your goal. Number 2, assess your qualifications. Number 3, research the schools. Number 4, improve what needs improving. Action step number 5 is prep for the essays. Now, I'm not talking about writing drafts because you don't know the questions yet. You may not even know fully where you're applying, but you can jot down notes and ideas. I would create a file where you can keep these notes, and that could be ideas for topics to include, notes from your informational interviews with, again, to hone your goal, from school research, visits to schools, visits to MBA fairs, discussions with current students, and thoughts about schools and possible essay topics. Now, what should be in some of those notes, in addition to what specifically in preparation for essay topics? What experiences are you most proud of? Those are the ones that you're going to want to expand upon in essays. Make those notes. And when you're thinking about it, what was the challenge you faced? What did you do? What actions did you take? What was the impact of those actions? What character traits did you reveal through your actions? Now, once the applications are out, then you can start working on the essays, because by then you will have chosen your schools also. But for now, I would nail the other stuff. Start work on the essays in June or July if you're aiming for round 1 deadlines, basically when the questions come out and you know which schools you're applying to. Okay, action item number 6, work on your resume. This is something you can nail now. Even if there's one bullet point that needs to be added before you actually submit, that's okay. But otherwise, get this polished off now. Keep your resume to 1 page. Focus on achievements and outcomes, not just descriptions of responsibilities. If you write, title financial analyst, and under there put a bullet, do financial modeling, I guarantee you people will roll their eyes. You're just wasting a bullet point telling them what they already know about financial analysts. Focus on achievements and outcomes. Quantify your impact whenever possible. And as I just said, don't use bullet points to repeat what your job and title implies. Go beyond that. Action item number 7, decide on and talk to your recommenders. Now, your recommenders should have supervised you directly and really know what you're capable of based on their personal experience with you. Don't be seduced by title. Ask them if they're willing to write a strong, supportive letter of recommendation for you. Tell them you'll give them brief material that they can use, and that material should consist of your resume, a brief summary of your accomplishments that they have seen, not ones that they wouldn't be aware of, but that they have seen, just to remind them, and access to the recommendation form. And finally, a 1-paragraph summary of what the school is looking for, what the school values, as well as about 4 weeks notice. Give them a time frame. And I see nothing wrong if you tell them it's due a week before it actually is. You don't need to ask that now. You can decide now. You can wait until June when you have more achievements under your belt. Now let's review the 7 action items. But first, if you would like to win a free consultation, listen up. And since you folks seem to really prefer the question window, we'll keep it in the question window. The first 3 people who can answer correctly the next question will get a free 15-minute consultation with me. In the question window, please post what is the first to do of the 7 steps. What is the first 7 steps? Okay, you guys got it. Kellen, Sammy, and Ayush. All right, yeah, clarify your goal, why MBA, goal setting. Exactly. Okay, most of you have it. It actually isn't the GMAT. So it's important, but it's not your starting place. Okay, oh, I'm really pleased. You all got it, and that wasn't the answer you gave initially. So, okay, glad. Let's go over the 7 steps. Begin with the end in mind. Clarify or hone your post-MBA goal. That's number 1. 2, evaluate your qualifications, GMAT, GPA, work experience, community service, leadership, to see if anything needs work. 3, research the schools to determine which best supports your goals. 4, improve those areas that need improving. 5, essay prep. No pressure. We're talking about taking notes right now. 6, work on your resume. Nail it. And 7, decide on and ask recommenders if they will help you in this regard. Some of you will look at this list and wisely decide to apply the second round or even wait a year. That's fine. Others have only a few action items to do because you already started on many of these tasks. Congratulations. But you should all have something to do. And whatever you do now or the next couple of months will improve your chances of acceptance. So right now, I'd like you to write down at least 1 action item. This is for yourself. You don't have to put it in the window. 1 action item. You can do it on your worksheet that you're going to start on this week based on today's webinar, and set yourself a deadline for completion. Okay? So this is, you should be writing this down Research schools. Okay, but write it down for yourself, Ayush. All right, that's great. And now I have a question for you. And this I would like a response in either the chat window or the question window. What's the most valuable piece of advice or the most valuable concept or insight so far in this webinar? We're not finished yet, but so far, what's the most valuable piece of advice, concept, or insight so far in this webinar? Hone your goals. Okay, great. Emphasis that should come first before anything else. Great. I'm so glad. That was really my goal here today. The action steps plus where to start and the steps to take for preparation. Wonderful. Actually around timing. Great, Sammy. I'm really pleased. Goal equals function equals industry. Details of the 4 pillars. Finding a good fit. Make sure you recognize. Thank you. The Venn diagram. Great. Thank you, John. The order of each action steps. Hone your goals. Great. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay. It's fine. And I assume all of you have getting a mechanistic start application journey. Great, wonderful, Ronald, thank you. But do you have a plan not only to prepare yourself to apply, but to actually apply? How are you going to show fit with your target programs? And then for the paradox of MBA admissions, which was the 3rd seat, if you recall from the beginning, we haven't really discussed it. Once you show fit, how are you going to show that you also stand out in the applicant pool, that you're an individual who will contribute to your class, your school's community, and ultimately make a difference in the world? That's the 3rd seat I mentioned way back at the beginning of the webinar, the stress-inducing paradox of MBA admissions. You have to show that you fit in at your target programs and at the same time are a unique individual, a standout in the applicant pool. It's not that easy. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed now, you have a lot of company in the applicant pool. We here at Accepted understand how tough it is. Many of us have MBAs, and we've been advising successful MBA applicants for years. Now, you're now at a crossroads on your professional journey. As you start your pursuit of the MBA, you can either take a do-it-yourself approach or a professional approach. Given that you were talking about a 6-figure investment in graduate management education, your career, your lifelong earnings, and job satisfaction, I highly recommend the professional approach and engagement with an accepted consultant. We'd like to help you apply confidently and successfully. While you want to do this exactly once, we've been helping MBA applicants get accepted for 25 years. We'd love to help you not only get accepted, but get into a program that launches you on your dream career trajectory. Put simply, it pays to have an experienced professional guiding you at this critical juncture on your educational and professional journey. Here's what you can do when you have Accepted on your side. You can access experience and expertise, reduce your stress, save time, optimize school choice and your application, and mitigate weaknesses. You gain access to candor, a mentor, and objectivity combined with expertise and decades of experience in MBA admissions. Now, some of you may say, well, Accepted is expensive. And we're definitely not a cheap service because of the quality of our staff. However, there are also expensive risks associated with not using Accepted. Reapplication can cost a couple $1,000s if you include test prep and interview travel. It can actually cost more than that if you include those things. There's 1 additional year of pre-MBA earnings, and that can cost you in the 5 figures in dollars. And there's potential that you could have gotten to a better program with lifelong higher earnings and network. And that could cost you in the 5 or 6 figures. Now, every year we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected that they would work with us. And we're happy to work with them. It's fine with us. But they would have been better off working with us initially, and so would you. But enough from me. What do accepted clients say? Well, let me give you a tiny taste of the thank you letters we frequently get from our clients. We made it. Finally submitted both applications on time. Thank you so much for your amazing effort and support on both applications. I will definitely keep you posted on my status on all 3 applications. I would also like to allocate the remaining time for my interview training, assuming I get invited for one. I feel exhausted but cannot sleep because of the excitement. You will be hearing from me soon. Again, thank you. This client was ultimately accepted to Oxford. Or this one, the second one, I've been admitted to Booth and am accepting. Your help and guidance was outstanding and allowed me to focus my energy on presenting myself in the best light, getting the result we wished for. And the third one, yesterday, and this was from an Indian male consultant, a generally overrepresented group in the applicant pool. Yesterday, I got the good news, and it was from Harvard. I'm absolutely thrilled. Amidst the euphoria, I want to take out a moment to thank Accepted, Jennifer in particular, for all the help and in ways that went beyond admissions consulting. From motivating me when I received a bunch of rejections, that was his first application cycle last December, to almost yelling at me when I tried to make last-minute tweaks to the essays. Now, imagine yourself in the shoes of the clients I just quoted, accepted to your dream school and getting ready for the experience of a lifetime and the career you've dreamed of. We want to support you on this journey, as we did for the clients, again, that you just heard from. But our doubts and questions about your qualifications and how to proceed, leading to analysis paralysis, obsessive forum stalking, GMAT Club or Beat the GMAT or whatever form is your favorite, Reddit. The fact that you're here tells me that you're not like those who want to take a do-it-yourself approach to your application. You're different. You want to actually apply to the right programs, present yourself effectively with a North Star, and get accepted to the MBA program that will help you achieve your goals, aspirations, and dreams. To do so, here's what I'd like you to do. Go to accepted.com/MBA/services/consulting. Add to cart an hour of consulting and get the experienced, objective perspective that can turbocharge your MBA application if you start now. We're here to guide you and help you get accepted to the best MBA program for you. In the context of the MBA, the investment in an hour or two of advice from an experienced and seasoned MBA admissions professional can pay off in spades in acceptance in 6 months, 9 months, or a year, and or better school, and possibly scholarships, in which case your ROI is through the roof. And now I'm joined by Natalie Greenblatt Epstein. Let me just unmute Natalie, who's been an accepted consultant for the last, I think it's now 12 years, and was prior to that admissions director at Michigan Ross and Cornell Johnson, and I think the University of Arizona. So, yeah, okay.
Hi.
Hi, Natalie, welcome. Let's see, we have questions here. Oh, Rachel noted that I said that the last testimonial was from an Indian consultant. He was a consultant by profession, but he was our client. All right, so let's look at some of the questions here. Okay. Sudhindra asked, should I take help of admissions consultants before giving the GRE or after? I am planning to give GMAT around the GMAT, not GRE, around April or May. Will having a GMAT score before approaching the consultant give better picture about myself, or just start off taking consultants' help? By the way, the application calendar is really useful, and so are the podcasts. I'm very flattered. Thank you. I would recommend that you start now, because the GMAT it's actually something that we don't work on with you, but we can help you in terms of recommending activities that you should do, when you should apply, what programs you should look at, where you should concentrate your efforts. I think there's a lot that we can do. I wouldn't necessarily buy an application package now. One of our that's for actually when you're ready to apply. But buying some advising time now, I think, can be enormously effective. Okay, let's see. Now, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is I would like to, Natalie, do you have anything to add to the last question that I responded to?
Oh, no, I completely agree. I mean, I work with clients a year before they're applying, and they have found that very helpful. So, yeah, you can do it at any time.
Okay. All right, so here's a question from Sammy. Do you have any general advice around number of schools to apply to and whether you should spread them across multiple admissions rounds? Natalie, you want to take that one?
Okay, the multiple admissions rounds is an interesting strategy that I've done with a few clients. It's not a typical thing. So should you apply to multiple rounds? It's not necessary. If you are ready to apply in the earliest round you can possibly apply, and like you're ready to submit, everything looks great, you're really happy with the application, then try to get in for round one. The strategies that I've been using is, if my clients are getting into schools that they thought may have been stretch schools for them in round one, we elevate that in round two and see if they can get into schools that may be more difficult to get into, more selective, if that's the way they want to go. And vice versa, if they're not getting into the schools they want to get into in round one, we sometimes jump to just a slightly lower tier and reframe the story. But if you're ready with your package, then I'd say go ahead and apply round one. But those two other strategies work as well if that's what you're up to. On average, I would say my clients apply to between 5 and 8 schools. I have had clients that apply to more. I've had clients apply to fewer. I think you want to apply to at least 3. You want to think about a stretch school, a match school, and a safety school that you would attend. But beyond that, it's about 5 to 8 schools.
Right. I typically recommend 4 to 8 schools. And in terms of, when would I recommend, when would I recommend 8? Sometimes people have, they're harder to assess. Maybe they have some really, really good strong points and they have some really significant negatives. So then I tend to recommend applying to more and a broader range of schools also. I also tend to say apply to your schools you want most round one, though there's an argument that goes the other way. But again, I would argue that you're best off applying round one to the schools that you most want to go to, because the class is wide open. And if you get in, and you don't have to apply to your round 2 schools, so you save that effort and that money. That would be, my suggestion. Okay, so again, going forward, we can also ask follow-up questions. So Ayush, let me see here. If you don't want to be unmuted, just mute yourself manually, and I'll still take your question. Don't worry about it. So Ayush, I'm going to try and unmute you. You had a question about what kind of schools Accepted consults with.
Yes. Hey, hi, Ayush here. So I've been applying to multiple schools around the globe and I got rejects from most of them. Never mind. But I'm very confused. Like, let's say if I'm applying for a school in Singapore, do I look for someone who has a specialization there to compare to, let's say, someone in India or Canada? So that's where I'm very confused.
We have consultants who've worked with the Singaporean business schools and the leading business schools around the world. So I don't think it's not an issue for us. We can definitely help you, and you can ask if we have experience with a specific school that you're interested in. But we have worked with the leading Singaporean schools.
And
Okay,
Canadian.
sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay. And then, okay, Sophia asks, if you're working full-time, are you still expected to take part in extracurricular activity? Oh, I just read your question, Sophia. I'm going to unmute you anyways, so that if we have follow-up questions, you'll be able to talk, okay? So just wait a second. Yes, Sophia, you're now unmuted, though I just asked your question. Natalie, do you want to take the question? Then you can ask Sophia follow-up questions also, and she can respond.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
So the answer to your question is yes, that is an expectation.
Okay.
Now, there are things that you can find that aren't extremely time consuming, but have large impact. And that's often what I recommend to my clients who are working 100-hour work weeks is, you still need to do something through extracurricular community service, regardless of working full-time or going to school full-time or, doing a combination of the two, that is still an expectation that the outcomes have of you. It shows them that you're an interesting person and can handle multiple things at once. It also gives you an opportunity to demonstrate qualities. Linda mentioned leadership when she was talking about extracurriculars and community service in her webinar. So absolutely, you need to think about doing something, but just find things that aren't extremely time consuming if it's going to be a problem for you.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome. Okay. Now we also have a question from, again, I probably will blow pronunciation here, Ronak, about work experience. Let me try and unmute you. You unmuted yourself. All right, so I'm just going to read the question then. The amount of work experience mentioned is at the time of application or joining. Okay. And then here's a question, kind of interesting question from Jake. And let me see, Jake, if I can unmute you. Okay, Jake, go ahead. You there? Nope. All right, then I will just read it. Is the struggle to be accepted significantly more difficult for someone with a fine arts background who's much more of the poet than the quant? Natalie, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a performing arts background before I went to business school.
I didn't know that.
So yes, I did.
Okay.
So I would say when I was applying, I felt it was a struggle, but I think I added a lot of value to the class. One of my favorite students of all time was a classical pianist. She had, like, her work experience was playing in a symphony, and yet she was absolutely brilliant. She went to go work for an entertainment consulting firm after she graduated from Cornell, but she was one of my favorite applicants, one of my favorite students. She contributed so much and she did so well to the school. Is it a challenge? Well, you're going to be unique. You still have to demonstrate that you can handle the work academically, and your goals have to match up with your skill set. So while you'll be gaining new skills at business school, there has to be a match behind what you do currently and what you'll do in the future.
Okay, yes. I think it's, if you're the proverbial poet, the biggest challenge you're going to face is just showing that you have the quant skills that business schools require. So one way to demonstrate that ability is through your GMAT or GRE quant score. Another way would be by taking courses, just to kind of get those muscles activated and show that you're preparing and improving those skills, even if maybe your quant score isn't exceptional. That would be something that I frequently recommend to people who are more poets than quants. And that would be one element of showing fit, because you need to be able to show that you can handle that kind of work. And frankly, you don't want to be struggling with basic math when you get there, because there's just so much that you can do and take advantage of. Okay.
Yeah, and I would, Linda,
Yeah,
I would totally agree with that, because I always say I wish MBA math or HBS core had existed before I went to school, because I feel like that first semester where we had a lot of quantitative material would have come so much easier to me. By second semester, I got the hang of it, but I felt like I was always behind first semester. Part of it was I wasn't familiar with the jargon either. I really had no business background whatsoever. And so for me, I wish I had those preparatory tools ahead of time. I mean, I tried to do some things on my own, but I think it would have been much more helpful to be in a classroom setting, even an online classroom setting, like MBA math.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, any Ante, Annie has a good question here. It's how tough is the MBA program for someone with an engineering background? I plan to do my MBA in the UK and it's just 1 year. I'm scared I won't have enough time to settle down in terms of transitioning from engineering to understanding business. What advice do you have for me? Natalie?
And engineers do really well at business school
Yeah.
because the material is so quantitative.
Right.
Where they may struggle is where the our attendee before you might be helpful in terms of presentation and writing papers, which is what my forte was, writing papers and doing the presentations. But in terms of, you're going to work together on a team, and the team is usually pretty diverse. So you'll have someone with a business background. You'll have someone with, a liberal arts or performing arts or fine arts background. You'll have probably another engineer in the group, and that's your study team. And you have to work on a team in order to get through business school. There's just no way to do it without. But engineers do fabulously well in business school. It's usually not a problem for them.
Okay, great. I want to thank you, Natalie, for joining me, for your insight and assistance here. Thank you to attendees for attending and participating, for your questions, your answers, your time, your attention. You've been a great audience, really fantastic. I have one final story, one last thought, and a question for you all. The thought: get started. There's a lot to do to have an excellent MBA application. I've given you 7 steps. Some of you may only have 1 or 2. That's fine. Congratulations, but do get started. And several of you said that was one of your major takeaways from today's webinar. And in that case, between those who realize that they need to research their goal and those who said that, I feel like I've accomplished my mission here today, and that you got something out of this webinar. And then submit your best. You'll thank me come deadlines. The story: a couple of years ago, I got a call from a fellow named John. He had an excellent GMAT, a prestigious job on Wall Street, slightly below average GPA, but in a really tough major, probably engineering, from a public Ivy. He was aiming for top business schools. And this competitive, accomplished applicant spoke to one of our consultants, actually it was Natalie, and to me about accepted services, and he decided to take the do-it-yourself route. The following year, he called again. He had not gotten in anywhere. He'd gotten close, 3 wait lists, but in the end, he didn't make the cut. And 3 wait lists really is tough. That is frustrating. This time, he wanted to work with a consultant whom he'd spoken with the year earlier, Natalie Greenblatt Epstein, whom you've just heard from. Perhaps the first time around, he was too cocky. Perhaps he was too nervous. Perhaps he didn't present himself that well, either via the written app or his interviews. Somewhere, he just didn't quite do it. Whatever it was, he didn't get in that first time. Here's what he wrote about his experience with Natalie. From the start, Natalie was honest and really got to know who I was. After reviewing my previous submission and talking multiple times, she identified numerous ways that I could enhance my application. As part of helping me craft an application that highlighted my attributes, we redesigned the layout of my resume and optimized my essay topics to present me in the most well-rounded way. If you expect the best from yourself, then Natalie will help you achieve it. The results speak for themselves, as I will be attending MIT Sloan. After HBS and Stanford, MIT Sloan has the lowest acceptance rate of any US MBA program. Now, John got the guidance he needed to avoid the pitfalls that had felled his previous applications. Working with Accepted, he also brought out his strengths and distinctive qualities and ultimately showed that he belongs at a top MBA program. He got into the top school with Accepted's help, and so can you. Get accepted. Now, I also have a question for you. I promised you a question, and you can answer in the chat window or the question window, whatever you prefer. Why are you sitting on the fence and hesitating to engage with Accepted? I think there's only one client that was in the audience today. Why are you hesitating? In the question window, please, or the chat window, whatever one you want. What's causing you to hesitate? You're clearly interested in what we had to say. You stayed for the presentation, for the Q&A. What's going on? What's causing you to hesitate? price. I suppose I'm trying to have things organized before the expenditure. Okay, I guess I'm concerned that I'm missing the rest of it, Jake. International experience in GMAT. We have a lot of experience with internationals. About 25%, 30% of our applicant pool is international, and we also have 3 consultants located outside the United States. All right, so let's deal with price. What's another one came up? Yeah. In terms of price, you folks are about to spend well over $100,000 in 2 years, which will mean an opportunity cost to almost 2 years' salary, a little less, because you will work over the summer. It's a major, major investment. Our fees are fractions, a tiny fraction of the cost of the MBA. And optimizing that MBA experience and getting the most out of it, I think on a business level is really easy to justify. Plus, and this is not on the website, but I will tell you, if you start in the month of March, you can pay it out over the next 6 months. So that just helps from a cash flow perspective. Now, that would be with our MBA application packages. The initial consultation, or the 1 hour consultation that we were talking about before, that's $330. And you can get some great insight into what you should be doing, how you can optimize your profile. You can also try us out. And that's not the 6-month payment option. That's something you have to pay up front. But that's a really good way to try us out. And realize that if that saves you 1 rejection, you basically, I mean, you're going to pay $150 to $200 for an application fee. So the costs, it's not that good a reason. Plus, you can, if you do like the advice you're getting, and Natalie, you're welcome to join me if you have something to add to what I'm saying. I think, yeah, you're still here. You can apply that 1 hour to the cost of an MBA application package. All right, let's see what else is causing you to hesitate. And suppose I'm trying to have things organized before the expenditure. Well, again, right now, this is not for the 1 hour, but if you go for an application package, then you can pay it out over 6 months. That offer will not be available. It is available through PayPal, but if you do it right now, it can be through us. There's no credit check. It's available to internationals as well as domestic applicants. And in terms of, Kellen, you wrote, I suppose I'm trying to have things organized before the expenditure. I think you should definitely know if you want to apply, but if you want advice on where to apply, how to improve your qualifications and profile, then now is the time to get it. Okay, anybody else? What's causing you to hesitate? Here it is. I guess I'm still concerned. Wait. Oh, it moved. That's aggravating. Okay, where did that go?
So Linda, while you're looking at that,
yeah, go ahead. You can add to what I just said.
I just want to, make a comment about, I would say like 80 to 90% of my clients tell me about how much time I save them so that they had more time to do things that they needed to do, like put attention to studying for the GMAT, or attention to their work, or attention to their extracurricular community service activities. So one of the things that you will gain with a consultant is the ability to streamline this application process, which is incredibly daunting. It's not easy. It's very time consuming, and we can help you reduce that time load.
Okay, great. I did find the question that had moved. It's from Jake. I guess I'm still concerned that I'm not a good fit for any school yet since I don't have much work experience. How much work experience do you have, Jake? Three years in an art gallery. Okay, 3 years on the low end. And I would say it would depend what you're doing in that art gallery. You don't have to tell me, but if you're if you're managing an art gallery, you are managing a business. If you're buying and selling paintings or deciding what to invest in paintings, that is business related. If you're negotiating, that is business related. If you're managing, that is business related. It is distinctive. You will still need to show that you fit in. You still need to show that you have those quant skills that we discussed. But again, I would argue that a 1 hour investment could really help you optimize your profile, provided you know that you need an MBA to achieve what you want to achieve. Okay, let's see what else. There are several comments here. I want to do the GMAT first to see if I'm competitive at my dream schools. That a couple of people said. That I think is a valid reason to wait. I don't encourage people to sign up for an expensive service unless they're very confident they're going to get the GMAT that they want. But also realize that many people think that unless they go to 3 schools, then they shouldn't get an MBA at all. And I would ask you if, there are some people who are in that category, and you might be one of them. But for the overwhelming majority of schools, if they don't get into their dream school, there are still great schools that will help them achieve their goals with ROI. Again, it's not true of everybody. There are people for whom it's not true, and for whom waiting for the GRE, I think Pratik and John both said that, makes sense. But the GMAT or the GRE, they're not the only thing in the MBA application process. There are these other elements that I kind of went into that you could be optimizing now, or perhaps we could suggest other schools for you to consider that would help you achieve your goals, even if you don't get the optimal GMAT. And the best time to visit schools is when they're in session, now. So again, if you're talking about an hour of advising, which would help you to optimize your profile, give you some direction, it seems to me like it's a really, really good investment. And then if you do end up proceeding and wanting comprehensive assistance, that 1 hour can be applied to an MBA application package or to a multiple hour plan. Let's see. Now, Ayush wrote, wasted some money on a consultant. I feel I can do better with more time. Well, in terms of wasting some money on a consultant that I assume you were not satisfied with since you felt the money was wasted, Accepted allows you to start. I think we have the lowest minimum purchase of almost anybody, and that is 1 hour. So we may not be cheap, but we don't require that you invest a lot of time and money before you can decide that we're not for you. And even if you do invest in a larger plan, whether it's an hourly plan or an application package or an essay package, we have what we call a no-lock refund policy. You can always ask for refund of the unused portion of the package or the plan. Again, it's in our refund policy. Our refund policy is part of our terms of service. Every page of the site links to our client terms of service, so you can get the details. But that's a little bit of reassurance on that point. The other thing I want to mention is, you can have a bad experience with any professional. If you can have a bad experience with a doctor, it doesn't mean you never go to the doctor again. It means you go get a different doctor. My mother recently had a bad experience with a physical therapist, and she says, I don't want to go to physical therapy because I had a bad experience. And my sister and I are telling her, go find a different physical therapist that'll help you. So the fact that you had a bad experience or felt you wasted some money on a consultant, I'm sorry to hear that. But it doesn't mean you don't need a consultant. It just means you need to find a different one. And somebody asked, do we have free consultations? Yes, we do have free consultations for those people who are interested or considering our services. And then JS asks, do schools look negatively on applicants who utilize consulting services? Some schools explicitly ask whether such services have been used. I think schools used to, and now I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago, look down on using consultants. At this point, the schools are engaging with consultancies, specifically accepted. We've interviewed the admissions directors at Wharton, Kellogg, Berkeley Haas, UCLA, Columbia, Georgetown, Duke, Cornell Johnson, the admissions directors and schools, including Harvard, Stanford, the entire M7, interact and engage with consultants via the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, which I co-founded and served as the first president of. So I think, so that would be my answer. Okay, Natalie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I haven't seen a problem with it. I'm still friends with a lot of my colleagues in admissions. They know I'm in consulting. I've brought former colleagues over to Accepted.
Yes.
It's a happy family. I mean, I think, they know that our work really is one that includes a lot of integrity. I mean, there are organizations that call themselves consultants and they wind up writing essays or just editing, not actually guiding their clients for the needs. And I think they understand that this is a much more comprehensive value add than other companies have, or that was happening 20 years ago. I was in admissions 20 years ago. I didn't have a problem with anybody using a consultant. I felt like they were, representing themselves in a good way, and the applicants, the essays were much easier to read. It represented them. We got to interview them also, so we could just, understand a little bit more about who they were and where they were going. And if it jived with what we saw in the application, the likelihood is they would get admitted. So that's usually it's not a problem. If they ask you, you should say yes. So I wouldn't hide it.
Okay.
And I don't know that many schools that ask anymore. I haven't seen that on an application in a long time. I know Columbia used to ask, but I just haven't seen it in a really long time.
You asked it one time, but I think they stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Hanaya wrote that she's not sure if she's applying for September 2021 intake due to price. I want to use the service when I'm very certain about applying. I can hear that. Again, my comment would be, if you purchase 1 hour, which is our minimum, you might get the guidance that really helps you prepare either for September 2021 or for a later intake. Just saves you time, gives you directions, a lot of advice to get going. With that, I want to thank
Linda. Can I just comment on the person that talked about being dissatisfied with their consulting also?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I've worked with a number of clients who worked with other consultants, and I just feel like they certainly appreciate our insight. I mean, I have in particular an admissions background and a consulting background. I've been consulting for 12 years. I was in admissions for 19 years. And so that, dual ability has been helpful, I think, when they're working with a consultant that may not have that. And I'm not talking about accepted consultants, because accepted consultants that don't have admissions backgrounds blow me away. They're amazing. You can use a 1 hour recheck review. We can do a wide and eye for you, and we can look and give you tips on what things may have happened last year and what we can do to help you reframe your brand, your positioning for this year, because you are a brand and that is what you are presenting to a school. So, how do you want to present yourself in the very best way?
Okay, John's asked, I'm not sure if I need a consultant in applying for the UK schools as much as US schools. Well, there's nothing saying that you can't just use our services for the U.S. schools exclusively, or perhaps some people also use our package services for some schools and then hourly services, which are a little bit less comprehensive, for other schools. It's not an all or nothing thing. I think you'd be amazed if you speak to us that there's a lot of flexibility in our services. In fact, my staff sometimes complains that there's just too many options. I can think of too many things, too many ideas, too many ways to approach the process that it can be confusing for potential clients. But that's not a problem, John.
And we have a consultant who was an admissions director at London Business School.
Business school.
So
Right.
she can give you
Right.
some insight as well into the UK schools. She's fantastic.
Right. Yes, and then Ayush is asking, before a 1-hour consultation, will you guys go through my previous applications to understand what went wrong? We have a rejection review service. Rachel, can you please post a rejection review service? And you'll see the details there. It's basically one rejection review per application, so we won't go through all your previous applications. But can you post that link, Rachel? You know, that's definitely something that we do. Okay, and you can buy as many rejection reviews as you want, but I would start with one, because you might just find that that one gives you the answers you need to move forward in the direction you want. Somebody asked about a below average GMAT score, and we regularly work with people with below average GMAT scores. We've had people get into M7 schools with GMATs in the mid 600s. Now, I can't promise that for everybody. Please don't take that as predictive, because that doesn't always work, but it's not uncommon.
I had a applicant that got into Stanford with a mid 600. So, but she was really outstanding in other ways. And her What Matters Most essay was, it is still my favorite of all time. So.
Okay, now another question here. Are you able to help prospective joint degree applicants such as JD, MBA? Yes, we are. We have that experience also. You can either work consistently with one applicant who has that experience, or you can work with somebody who has MBA admissions experience and JD admissions experience, because we do have that breadth, that diversity. Okay. So with that, since I think I've addressed everybody's questions, I want to thank you again for your time and attention. Natalie, I want to thank you for your assistance. I want to just encourage you again, think about the clients that you've heard from. They all got accepted with, all got accepted with accepted, and you can too get accepted. Good luck.